Hey everyone, today we're going to cover how to start blocking out our vehicles in 3D modeling. This is part of a series where I'll be covering vehicle modeling from beginning to end. Today's video focuses specifically on the key tips and workflows for blocking out your car exteriors, like planar modeling, modeling the vehicle in sections, and how to balance form and topology. I'll be showing step-by-step workflows at the beginning, then jumping to a narrated time-lapse of the blockout process. This video will include a combination of high-level concepts, workflows, and step-by-step techniques, and is targeted for beginner to advanced skill level in 3D modeling. Maya 2022 will be used for this tutorial, but the workflows can be applied to any 3D software, as well as any version of Maya. So with that, let's get started. Alright, so here we are in Maya, and if you remember from the last video, we focused on setting up reference images using blueprints, also setting up a perspective matched camera, which we'll be using later in the modeling process. And we also set up a curve guides group here. So you can see that I have this curve guides group here, and I do have it set up on a specific layer here that is just set to a specific color, so it pops as a modeling. All right, and I'll hit just Control-1 to toggle isolate mode here. All right. And the key thing is that you don't see me pull up a lot is I am constantly using reference. So I do have this nice pure ref mood board of the StatSun 240Z, and you can see it from all sorts of angles. All right. And so now that I have that all set up, I can begin the blockout process. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and hide what I have here, which I will be covering in the narrated time lapse, and I'll just kind of start off by doing the front section and show you how to kind of build up from here, and then we'll go from there. So the first thing that I'll do is just hold shift and right click and create a plane. So I'm going to move this into position here at the front of the vehicle. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of scale this up. I'm also going to go ahead and just give this 2 by 2 subdivision heights, and then I'm going to go ahead and just simply delete the middle edge here, or you can set this subdivisions accordingly. I'm going to jump to my modeling toolkit here, and what I want to do specifically is to also make sure that I have symmetry on. Now sometimes the symmetry is a little bit wonky, so I'll show another technique that you can use, but for now this will work fine. And I can go ahead and kind of move my vertices into position. So just hold shift right click, or just hold right click, and you can, switch to different sub-object modes like vertice, edge, and face, and I'll be doing that a lot. Now, the key things that I'll be using a lot is obviously switching the different sub-object modes with just right-click, or if you see me grab my modeling tools here, I'm using shift right-click, or if I'm converting selections, I'm using control, right? So it's a combination of right-click, control right-click, and shift right-click, all right? So I'll go ahead and just kind of move these vertices into position here. And this is where the guides are going to be extremely helpful. Now I'm not going to worry about doing the hood scoop and this hood detail here. So I'm going to just worry about the base mesh of this hood. All right. And the key thing right now, that the first step is we're focusing on planar modeling. All right. So we're using this edge copy method, right? So by simply holding right click, jumping to edge mode, then holding shift, and then just moving with the move tool, right? So just grab your move tool here with W, hold shift, and then move. So that's just simple edge copy. This is of course the same as using Control E to extrude an edge, and you can also just simply use the shift move, and that's going to be completely fine, and that's all really I'm going to want to do. It is obviously a bit faster than using Control E or using extrude here as well. Okay, so I'll just kind of undo that, get back to my base, and we're just going to kind of move things into position. All right, and the one thing that I use all the time that you're going to see is that if you kind of have these vertices off in position, I like to use Control middle mouse to move off in the normal direction, so you can see what's happening there. So Control middle mouse moves in the normal, right? And then if I hold Control shift, that does an edge slide. So you can see the word slide kind of popping up there, right? Those are all based off of these constraints here. So you see edge slide and surface slide, and we may be using surface slide a little bit later. But for now, I'll be using Control shift for edge slide, or I'll be using Control middle mouse for the normal. Okay. The other thing is you can also snap directly to these edges, which is really nice. So now if I actually go ahead, what I want to do is copy another edge. So we'll copy this here, and we'll kind of move this back a little bit, and we're just making our way across the vehicle. And if I want to snap this vertex here, I can go to vertex mode, and if you hold V, obviously V will snap to another vertex. If you hold X, that'll snap to the grid, right? You have all these different snapping methods, but if you hold C, which is this, you can see curve, you can snap to the curve here. Now, it is a little bit, finicky sometimes. I did have trouble with it, but the thing that I want you to keep in mind is that these are just curve guides, okay? So if you find yourself having a little bit trouble with that, don't worry. You can use it if it works, but for now, this is just a guide, and I did get pretty close here. So that should all work as needed, okay? So I'm gonna just continue to kind of just edge copy this, and I'm just focusing on just getting this edge flow here for the hood, okay? So I'm making my way around, and we got this so far. All right, so we're simply just using edge copy right now, and we're just kind of moving vertices into position, and this is kind of where we're getting. Now again, these guides are helpful. You can also still use your reference images here, so that's going to help. You'll see me jumping back and forth between these, which is going to be helpful, and you just kind of use whatever detail and reference that you have. So we have this so far where we have the edge kind of going around for the hood, and then I want to just kind of continue that this way. So now I can kind of extrude, and then you can see what we're starting to get here. So this is going to be this nice edge loop, right? This is where topology is going to be important, is going to help define this detail here, okay? And this body line is also going to be helpful, all right? Which brings me to my next tip, right? So if we're focusing on using edge copy, we're going to make sure to focus these edge flows, at least right now, simply on these body lines of the vehicle. And now you can start to see that if things start to look okay from the front and side views, well, that's where your body lines and your curves are going to, make sure that you're reminded that you need to pull things out and work more efficiently in perspective. So here we go, and you can kind of start to see what we get here, right? So I'm going to use Control Shift and just kind of move, and we'll just kind of continue to move that throughout the vehicle here. All right, so I'm going to just kind of bring this to the center of this wheel well here, and what I'm going to do is scale in the z-axis, so we have something like this. And again, we're going to just kind of move it out in the x, and we're using these guides as just helpful guides in perspective. So there we go, we get something like that. And then now what I can do is I can start to extrude and edge copy this part of the hood back. All right, so what I'm going to do now is you can either use a side view or just perspective and hold Shift, and you can again just hold Shift and just move this in the axis that we want. And then we can kind of scale this in one direction, and there we go. We're going to get nice clean edge flow, and we're not getting too messy here right at the beginning. So this is exactly what we want. I like to use vertex snapping too, or you can hold Shift, right click, go to merge vertices, and then target well. Now you have to be in vertex mode to get this, and then you click and drag on that vertex. So you just click on this, drag, and there you go. And then we can continue to edge copy this back, just like so. And then I'm going to move this up. Now remember, we're using our edge guides and curve guides here, and we're going to keep this like so. And I can also use another merge vertice method, which I like to use a lot, which is hold Shift, right click, merge vertices, and then merge to center. And that'll just merge these vertices to the center and kind of average the position between them. So there we go. All right, so this is kind of what we have so far. And what I can also do now is add another edge. We can see that we need a little bit more curvature on the front here, right? So what we can do is actually probably extrude this back here for the hood. So I'm going to go ahead and select this edge loop. And sometimes it does get a little bit weird when it does that. Mine does get a little bit finicky. And If it does that, no worries, just hit Control E to extrude, and then you can just simply move it. Grab that edge. Now I did use smooth preview, so I can kind of easily separate that with 3. So you can use 1 and 3, okay? And 3 is smooth preview, and 1 is normal mode. And there we go. We can just kind of move that and select those edges, all right? So I'll bring this to right about here, and we're just gonna use, now we're just gonna kind of follow our curve guides here. So I'll leave this one there at the bottom, and we got that. And we're keeping in mind we're following our body lines here, right? These body lines are going to be key for this initial blockout, okay? Now, we're not going to be too constrained by topology and edge flow, but this is going to give us what we need, all right? So if I hold shift right click, I can grab multi-cut, and I'm going to want to just cut here in the middle. Now, I can use edge flow. Let's see what edge flow does here in the modeling toolkit. So you can pop that open, enable edge flow, and that's going to kind of conform that there. Now you see it does give us kind of this bulbous line of edges here, which I don't want, so I'll disable that. Sometimes it works well, and I'll show you instances where it does. And I'll just kind of move this forward now, so we get something like this. All right, and we can kind of just average these vertices out, and then we're getting something like this, and this is good so far. All right. So moving, at a good pace so far. We've kind of got the main hood. It's really blocky right now, but we're not going to worry too much about that. We only got a few edges to worry about. But what I am going to do is just kind of bring this in. I want to get that front part of the vehicle, the rest of the front fascia. So I'm going to take these edges here, not all the way around, just about here, and just kind of move these down, okay? Then what I'm going to do is just go to vertex mode in my side view and just really just move these in like so. And then I'm going to take this edge here, and we're just going to move this out, and that should be fine. And then what I can do is select these bottom row vertices, scale these like that, and then I'm going to go ahead and just shift copy these edges again. So you can kind of see I'm just kind of using the same technique here, and I'm just focusing. I'm not worried about all the modular pieces. Those are going to come later. And then I can just kind of move these like so. And I can kind of deselect that one vertex there, and this should work like so. So you can start to see how we're starting to build the whole front part of the vehicle. And then I can just kind of move and position this like so. And there we go. Now you can see kind of what we're starting to get. Now here's the thing that's interesting. I'm not going to hand model this wheel well. Instead, I'm going to use the next tip, which is going to be, the first 3 I should recap is actually planar modeling, which we've been doing, and then using the body lines to dictate our edge flows and where we have our edges, and then now we're modeling the vehicle in sections. So what I mean by that is I kind of have this front hood and fender area kind of roughly blocked in. So instead of working from this geometry, I'm going to create a new piece of geometry. So hold shift right click, and obviously I'm going to grab a cylinder. And I'll go ahead and kind of move this into position here. And we're going to have something like this, 90. And we're going to scale that up. And what I typically end up doing is just using, we'll start with something a little bit lower, 16, and that should be fine. And I'll just continue to position this cylinder here. It's going to roughly be in this position here. And I'll just continue to kind of scale that up. And we're obviously going to have to modify this a bit, but I'm going to focus on that outer radius first. So we're going to get something like that, maybe just a hair more. And I'm going to move this like so. What I can do is kind of scale that in a little bit. And I'm using these, again, curves as a guide. So I'm going to move these back so this back set of the cylinder matches up. Then I can go to vertex mode and just manually position this, and I can just kind of scale that in like so. So you can kind of see how I'm just going to scale that in and now match that outer radius here. And this is, again, where the curves are going to be incredibly helpful for this part of the process. Okay. Now what I am going to do now is go ahead and just delete, obviously, the inside faces as well as the bottom rows that I don't need. So delete, and there you go. So now we have this part of the wheel well, which is great. And then now I can just worry about, getting this to be in the right position. And you can see this is where edge slide is very powerful, right? So I can just worry about moving this and matching this and holding Control Shift as I'm moving this inside, and it's just going to work its way and match the form that I'm trying to achieve. So it should be fine. And there we go. Just holding Control Shift middle mouse drag, Control Shift middle mouse drag, and there we go. And then I can just kind of drag this down here at the bottom, and I can do the same thing here at the front end of the vehicle. And then now things, like I said, we're looking good from the side, and then I need to make sure that things look good from perspective. So I'm going to use these guys, these curve guides, to help out a bit here. I'm going to move these in, something like so. We're going to match this. Now I know that the front, once we get to the bottom set, right, this is, and I have my reference here on the other side of my monitor, but you can kind of see how, on different parts of the wheel well, it's a little bit hard to see here. And it's definitely going to be a different modded, but it does get flat as it comes towards the bottom there. So just keep that in mind as we're working our way. So it's more of a noticeable extrusion, and it kind of flattens out towards the fronts and the ends of the wheel well there. All right. All right. And what I'm going to do, like I said, is just kind of scale these in the x-axis, and that'll kind of help flatten that out, which is exactly what I want as we get towards the bottom. All right, great. So that's looking pretty good. And then I can kind of move these in on the front of the vehicle. We're just gonna kind of match and get something like this, a little bit closer. And we can kind of jump to the other piece of the geometry that we have, and we're just kind of like meeting them halfway, which is completely fine. All right. And now that we got that, that's looking good. And I'll actually make some room for this geometry here. This is where, like I said, for this tip is modeling the vehicle in sections, and then we can, worry about attaching it, right? Because I wouldn't want to just manually try to edge copy this wheel well form here based off of this geometry. It's just too blocky and will cause a lot of tweaking, lost efficiency. So instead, I started with the cylinder and worked from there. So I select both of these, hit Control-1 to isolate, and we can kind of work from here. And we can start matching the topology. So I can go to the edge faces here. You can see wireframe unshaded. You can toggle that, or just set up a script for that. You can kind of Control-Shift, slide those like so. And I'm going to just multi-cut, and just now we're preparing our geometry to be attached to this part of the vehicle, to this part of the wheel well. So I'm just adding in some edges. Now make sure not to just add edges without adjusting the form appropriately. And this should be fine. And I think we're okay here. And maybe I'll grab these and move these like so we can attach this to this. I'll add one more edge here along the middle, and I'll hold Control-Shift and scale, and that'll help kind of straighten these edges out. So that's a function I use all the time just to keep nice clean edges. And Control-Shift scale, and that'll kind of help move some things. Don't worry about our hood. It is obviously a little bit flat, but that'll kind of come in time. So there we go. So what I can do now is select both of these pieces of geometry, hold Shift right click, combine, and there we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete the history. Now keep in mind we have symmetry on, and this is where symmetry kind of gets messed up. So I can just select these. Well, actually I have to turn it off first, and then select half of that side. Then I have to remirror it. Now make sure that if I go here to the top view, turn on my grid mode, you want to make sure that everything is scaled perfectly, which it is. And then it's snapped to the center of the grid here. So there's the 0, 0, everything's good. And I can hold Shift right click and then do a mirror here, and just do a mirror. And I always set the merge threshold really, really low to like 0.003, so it doesn't accidentally merge anything else. X, negative X, everything's good. And there we go. And then I can turn my symmetry back on. All right. So we have this separate. Now I can focus on just combining these. And you can do something as simple as a bridge. So now I can hold shift right click and we can use bridge. And that'll kind of merge those pieces together there. And then what I'm going to do here is actually just kind of move these forward. So I'll hit Control 1 to exit isolate mode and shift copy this forward. And we're going to use this and align it to this part of the hood like so. And this is looking good. And there's a couple different ways, we can add another edge here. So I'm not going to worry too much about it. I'll go ahead and just simply add in another edge here for the hood. And we'll do another bridge. I may have done it a little bit differently in the tutorial or the time lapse, but this should be fine. And then edge copy this. And there we go. And so now we have, all of these vertices. We just basically select them all, scale them in one axis to get them all aligned, and then do a simple merge vertices at a low threshold. And there you go. And then they're all attached except for that one. So I can just do a quick merge to center, and there you go. And I'm just, again, toggling between 1 and 3 to make sure how things are looking, and that'll be completely fine. So selecting the front fascia again. Now we have this part of the front grille or the front fascia. I can bridge these two, and then I can bridge these. Actually, we're just going to bridge all the way down. This is exactly what we want. So just select the 2 edges on both sides, and there you go. All right, and look at that. So we've added this. Now things are a little bit messy and blocky. Don't worry about that, right? This is going to come in time. And then we've now used, edge copy, planar modeling to get this form. We're focusing on the body lines and the curve guides that we have. We've modeled this in sections, and now we're going to focus, we can focus now that we have this on the form of the blockout. Okay, so what I can do now is just make sure things are a little bit cleaned up and I don't get too messy here. So you can see I can kind of grab these parts of the grille, of the front fascia, and just kind of move these. And this is why I like to use this nice edge slide back and forth, and that kind of helps alleviate some of that that needs to happen, right? And then alleviate some of that form that needs to happen. I'm not worried too much about this edge here because that one was just the bottom of this piece. So I'm going to have to do like a separate extrusion and separate this out. So I'm not worried about that now. And I can go ahead and select these edges here, deselecting the wheel well, and just kind of bringing that up a bit. All right. So we're starting to get a little bit cleaned up there, and I can move this into position. And what I actually want to do is kind of scale these like I did the other side. And we're just going to kind of move. But again, I'm not getting too caught up in the minutia, the details, the fine details. All of that's going to come in time. All right. Now I can definitely see the hood needs some love and some work. What I'm going to do is separate these here. And what I want to do now is bring this center line up a little bit because it's too flat. It's basically been extruded all the way flat. So I'm going to bring these up, and there's going to be this natural curvature down. And the good thing is I don't have a crazy amount of topology. I don't have a crazy amount of edges. So I'm just going to worry and get this nice gradual dip down there. And what I can do is just kind of do this edge slide here. And it's just going to help with this curvature and slope of this hood. All right, so you get something like that. And again, looking at our reference, it's a pretty flat hood. There's some detail in there that we're going to add later on, but for now, this should be what we need. All right, so we're starting to get that, and then basically this next part, which I'll basically kind of just quickly show, which I'll cover in the time lapse. I'm going to now work on this part of the hood. And this is where I can start to edge copy. Actually, what I want to do is move these back here. Get something like this. Actually, deselect these bottom row. And this is going to kind of give me that nice curvature upwards. Right? And then we can add in this edge here and scale these like so. And then I can bring this down because you can see that there's that nice curvature upwards. Oops, deselect those two. And then I can work with this here. And this is going to be kind of the hood, part of the hood that leads right up to that windshield, which is what I want. And I can bring these like so. So you can start to see, like I said, we started off slow, but you're going to quickly just start building up to, you know, the rest of the vehicle. And it's just using the same techniques over and over again. And you can see I'm going to just edge slide, move these into position like so. And this should be good enough. I think what I'm going to do now is we'll switch over to the time lapse because we've already spent a bit of time, but this is the main tips. And we're focusing on the form and the blockout, and then making sure that we're keeping the overall form in mind as we're working. All right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the time lapse. All right. So here we are. And here's the time lapse that, well, it took me about 50 minutes, just under an hour to create the full block out of the vehicle. And I'm going through and just applying the same techniques that we just walked through. I'm using planar modeling, edge copying to create the main form of the vehicle. And I'm using the body lines to drive the overall form. And, I'm keeping everything, the form in mind as I'm going through and doing this, but I'm not getting caught up on edge flow and topology. Now I've went ahead and switched over, doing the wheel well, using the cylinder, breaking the vehicle up into sections, again, is going to help keep clean topology and edge flow, keep good form, and not have to worry about trying to make, a box look curvy, right? And then you can see, again, I started with the hood, I did the wheel well, I switched to the front fascia, and then I'm going to just combine those elements once I start to prepare the topology for, for combination when I run the combine tool in Maya and just make sure everything's clean, right? And so here I am, again, just using the edge copy, making my way. And once you get to that front fascia, the front fender area, it starts to go really fast because, you essentially laid out the base form of the vehicle. And then now we're just going to take that existing topology now and start to do things like detail out the hood. And then we can see I'm going ahead and working on the roof of the vehicle. And it's the same thing. I'm just edge copying, moving, adjusting vertices, and then we're going to do the same thing and get the rest of the door, right? And I'm not worried about door lines, I'm not worried about door handles, I'm not worried about any of that right now. I'm just focusing on the form. And I'm regularly and constantly checking the form in perspective. And you can see for the rear part of the rear wheel well is I just duplicated and moved the front one back. So I'm saving time there, and the topology already matches up. I don't have to worry about adjusting topology down the vehicle. And then now I'm doing the, rear part of the vehicle. And it's all just, working together really well, all aligning. And then I'm just going to continue to refine. And you can see I refine that detail. And here, same thing. That hood, I'm going through, the roof. I'm just going through and using the same technique that I did for the front fascia. So that's why I didn't want to do the whole thing real time because it would have been over an hour and a half when I kind of ran through it. And doing it this way, I can kind of focus on the techniques, the main techniques that I used to model this in hopefully about, 15, 20 minutes. And then I can show you the time lapse of me applying that to the rest of the vehicle, right? Because again, it's just saving time. It's more efficient. And I'm all about showing you guys workflows and tools instead of, here's exactly how and where you move each vehicle, part of the vehicle and vertice. Okay, and that wraps up this part of the block out. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of show you the finished one from the time lapse, and you can see here's where we're at. And you can start to see how everything looks. And really, I just did a little bit of vertice cleanup from that time lapse, just some stuff I didn't want to slow down the process of the video, but everything's looking pretty good. I'm not, again, worried about topology and edge fill. You can see I even have a triangle here at the front part of the vehicle where the roof comes in. I have a triangle here in the back. All that's going to be addressed as we go. All right. So to recap all the steps, we used planar modeling to work on actually building geometry. We focused on using the curves as guides and focusing on the body line of the vehicle. So you can see all my edges and everything line up to the body lines that I have here. We modeled in sections, so I focused on modeling the wheel well as a separate piece of geometry, did the rear part, the front face of the hood, and then just kind of combine things and have matching topology. And then I focus right now just on the blockout and focusing just on the form. All right, so keep that in mind. The next video, we're going to just start adding in all this detail. We're going to clean up the geometry. We're going to add in more detail. So, I'd say to get everything fully detailed out, it'll be probably another few videos, but, I'm going to capture every part of the process that I'm going through. So hopefully you guys find this helpful. So if you have any questions, comments, or even some suggestions, let me know down below. But yeah, really enjoying this tutorial. So I will see you guys around. Take care.